Hello everybody, this is Connor, BoatsDon'tSink, here with another Shadowverse Evolve deck profile. Continuing on with the BP03 decks, today we're going to be looking at Fable Forest. What is Fable, you may be asking? Fable is a new keyword sort of trait that was introduced in BP03, Flame of Lævateinn. Each class has Fable cards in it. Some focus on it more than others, mostly Forest, Sword, and Haven that are really going to be caring about the trait. But each class got one of their two legendary followers in the set as a Fable. They're all based on various fairy tales, stories. We have Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, etc. that you can see here. And then all of it is held together by some neutral cards that you can play in any of these decks that care about the Fable trait, headed up by Alice, Wonderland Explorer. So all of these are going to be pretty important to our deck. As usual though, the deck is pretty much just a week one work in progress, so make sure to test it out for yourself, make any changes that you think are necessary for your meta. These decks are meant mainly as sort of starting points to build around. So here we go, we got lots of 3-ofs as usual, trying to keep things as consistent as possible. Very low curve, typical of Forest. We're still playing a lot of the sort of bounce options and combo cards from sets 1 and 2, in addition to the new Fable cards that we have rounding out our lineup for set 3. Most of the Fable cards are going to be part of a wider removal package, with the remainder of them focusing on just setting up our main kill combo. Looking at our evolution deck, pretty simple, just 2-2-2-2-2 split. A lot of these are cards that we were playing before anyway. You got Ancient Elf, Lily, Tia, and Silence Suzuka, with the only new evolution card being Alice, Wonderland Explorer, which is going to be one of our main card advantage engines in the deck. And you can check this out on deck log, as always, at the code in the bottom right. There's going to be NSQP for this deck. Before we jump into the cards in detail, I want to take a look at one in particular, Beauty and the Beast. This is our main sort of boss monster for the deck. It has Rush and Aura, which is a great combination of keywords with a huge 5-7 stat line. Main text on here, Fanfare, put a Fable counter on this card. If this card was put onto the field from anywhere other than your hand, give it Storm. In this deck, that is just going to be our EX area. Some of the other Fable decks have ways to play things from deck or from Cemetery, but here we're just going to have to get this card into our EX area and run with it from there in order to gain Storm, and that's just going to turn it into a basically bigger version of Forte. Second effect on it lets us pump it based on the number of Fable counters that are on it, which is really just going to make this an even bigger Forte. It's very feasible to get this up to 10, 12 or bigger, which makes it one of the most threatening finishers in the game, especially with how uninteractive it is. So keep this card in mind as we go through the cards in detail, because this is pretty much what our entire game plan is trying to end up on. Alright, so looking at the deck in detail here, as I said, we have a really low curve, 14 1-drops, 14 2-drops. We got 32 followers, 3 spells, and 5 amulets, a little higher on the amulet count than Forest has been in the past, but for good reason. First card we have is pretty much staple in Forest since the beginning, Elfchild May. Fanfare, deal 1 damage to an enemy follower, and when this card is returned to hand from the field, deal 1 to an enemy follower. This is really good, especially going second, which this deck wants to do anyway, since evolution points are very key to a lot of our early plays. If your opponent, turn 1, plays anything with 1 defense, which there's a lot of good 1 defense options right now, and on top of these, Mage Leader and Prism Priestess, it really punishes decks for getting greedy and running out those out turn 1. May can just easily pop any 1 defense followers. Otherwise, if your opponent doesn't have anything on board immediately for you to pop, you can save this for turns 2 and 3, and use it in combination with any of our followers or any of our cards really, that return followers to hand, so that we can, play May, play a bounce card, bounce May back to our hand, start shooting for 2, 3, 4 damage in a single turn by just looping it back and forth. Ancient Elf is especially good for this, since you can play the May, play the Ancient Elf, that's 2 damage, play the May back down for a 3rd damage, evolve the Ancient Elf, that's a 4th damage, and then the Ancient Elf being evolved can still attack that same turn. And you can do all of that for 4 play points going second. So, really good at just clearing out boards. May is especially good against wide boards, since you can spread individual 1 damage pings across a lot of X1 tokens. Second card we have, this is a new one. This is Actress Faria. This is a 1-cost 2/2, so this is just Goblin with upside. You can engage to select another Fable follower on the field and put a Fable counter on it. So if you draw this card early, you can just run it out to attack for 2 a bunch, but in the mid game and late game, this is really good at powering up a lot of our cards that need Fable counters on them. 2 of our cards, Flower Princess and Magical Fairy Lilac, both act as removal options that have to remove Fable counters from themselves to remove enemy followers, and Actress Fairy is going to let them reload on those counters. And our finisher, of course, Beauty and the Beast. You can use Actress Faria to stack extra counters on it to get an even bigger power boost. Next we have Nature's Guidance, our 1-cost spell. This is a pretty simple one. Just select a card on your field, return it to hand, draw a card. This is really good at enabling a lot of our effects that require the card to be returned to hand, which Elfchild May and Harvest Festival are both going to trigger off of that. It also replaces itself, and it's good for getting combo count, which we don't have a lot of in this deck. Previous Forest decks cared more about hitting, multiple cards played in a turn, but we only have a few here. The other thing it's really good for is just followers that either have really good fanfare effects, or followers that we want to just play over and over again and kind of be able to protect by putting them back into our hand. So Woodland Band, we'll take look at in a couple cards. It's an amulet that has a fanfare effect that's going to give us card advantage. We can bounce it back, play it again. We can use Crystalia Tia to make the 4/4 Eve token, return it to hand so we can do it again next turn. Or Silence Suzuka, play it down, hit our opponent for 4 damage Storm, bounce it back to hand, and then have it for later to hit for even more Storm damage. Our first amulet, we have Harvest Festival. This has historically been a 3 of in all the Forest lists, since it's just one of your best bounce targets by far. We're cutting it down to 2 here because of our other amulet that also provides card advantage. This is just 1 cost. When this leaves the field, draw a card. Pay 1, engage, send to Cemetery, give your leader +1 defense, which will trigger, of course, its effect to draw a card as well. But you can also trigger that by bouncing it. So any of our bounce options, Nature's Guidance, Ancient Elf, and Marvelous Sunday, are going to be great. Harvest Festival is a really good play just on turn 1, because you can follow it up on turn 2 with any of these to get draw extra cards and just sort of progress your game plan. Later in the game, it becomes a little less useful, but sometimes playing it just for the life gain is good anyway. Our other amulet, Woodland Band. This is really the more important amulet for this deck in particular. Fanfare, look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may put a Fable follower from among them into your EX area, put the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. So this is one of the ways that we're going to be able to get Beauty and the Beast into our EX area, which, as I said, is super important for our strategy. In addition to Beauty and the Beast, there are also a number of other Fable cards. Actress Faria, Flower Princess, Magical Fairy Lilac, and Alice. So we have 15 cards in the deck that are hits off of this. You're going to miss sometimes, but unfortunately there aren't really any others worth including in the deck, so you just have to accept that it's not always going to get you a card, but when it does, it's a really good card. The other effect is to engage, send to Cemetery to put a Fable counter on a Fable follower on our field. So similar to Faria, we can use this to reload Flower Princess and Lilac's removal effects, or we can use it when we play Beauty and the Beast to just keep adding more counters to pump up power even higher to try to kill our opponent. Moving into our 2-drops, we have Ancient Elf. Again, solid staple since set 1. 2-drop 2/2, Ward. Fanfare, return another card on your field to hand. Give this follower +1/+1. Makes it a turn 2 3/3 with Ward if you have any 1-drop that you play. Even with cards like Actress Faria in hand, it turns them into viable just turn 1 plays. Since you can play them turn 1, turn 2, attack for 2 damage, play Ancient Elf, bounce them back to hand, and now you have a 3/3. And you can save Faria for later. But really, the targets you're going to be looking for here are Elfchild May, Harvest Festival, and the Woodland Band, since it's going to be either removal or card advantage respectively. And it makes your Ancient Elf just that much better. You get board presence, and you're either generating card advantage or slowing your opponent down at the same time. Ancient Elf can evolve for 1 play point. The evolve is a 3/3, still has ward, and on evolve, you can once again return a card on field to hand to give this follower +1/+1. This lets you loop effects like Harvest Festival and Woodland Band to just keep replaying them over and over again in the same turn, and try to get, you know, as many spins as possible on finding your good cards into EX area, or dealing 1 damage as many times as possible to clear boards. And since you're getting a second +1/+1, this does make Ancient Elf a essentially 3-cost 5/5, which is really good value, and is one of the ways that you can start chunking your opponent for damage in the early game, to hopefully set up lethal turns with either Silent Suzuka or Beauty and the Beast. Our next 2-drop is Marvelous Sunday. This is from the Uma Musume collaboration booster. This is just another way we can bounce things. 2-cost 2/3 Fanfare, return another card on your field to its owner's hand to give your leader +2 defense. This card is good against sort of aggressive decks, since we can start building up a life total early to sort of hedge against any 2/2s that might be coming at us. Though, again, you can bounce the same cards, May, Harvest Festival, Woodland Band, still good with all the same things. Just gives you more redundancy on being able to bounce. And yeah, overall, really good card. Helps right now in the format. There's a lot of like effect damage that can be going to players' faces, so the life gain's pretty appreciated in a lot of matchups. Next we have Crystalia Tia. I'm sorry, Crystalia Lily. Tia will be next. This is a 2-cost 1/3 Fanfare. Look at the top 2 cards of your deck. You may reveal a Crystallian or Pixie follower from among them, add it to your hand, put the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. We only have 3 cards, 8 copies total that meet this requirement, which isn't a lot, though funnily enough, it is still more than the deck usually played in the previous set, since it just had Lily and Tia. Magical Fairy Lilac, one of our new cards, is a Pixie follower, so we can grab it off of this. You don't really care that much if you miss. Obviously, it is straight upside if you do get to draw a card off this. But if you miss, it's not the end of the world. It's going to feel bad every now and then when you like see a Beauty and the Beast in the top 2 and put it on the bottom of your deck, but you just have to accept that's going to happen. Since you don't know the order of cards in your deck, it really, even though it feels bad, it's no different from that card just having been near the bottom of your deck anyway. So you can't really control that, so don't ever take that as a reason like not to play these cards or not to like put them on board. Second, we can evolve for 2, which is going to make this 4-cost total. The evolution on evolve, select an enemy follower on the field and put it on the bottom of its owner's deck as a 2/4. This is basically just one of the best removal effects in the entire game. You're able to remove any enemy follower unconditionally, obviously as long as it doesn't have aura. And since you're putting it on the bottom of the deck, it's going to be able to dodge any last words effects. So if you need to get in for extra damage, this is good at stopping a Bellringer Angel, since your opponent doesn't get to draw extra cards. But later in the game, Lily's also really good at answering things like Leonidas, or the new Dark Alice, or various other cards. This has a few cards that when they last words, they go back to EX area and are able to be played again. And this just completely stops any of those, which, you know, shuts down a lot of good effects right now. So just premium removal. And at 4 cost, it's 2 to evolve feels expensive, but it's not really any different than the 3-cost 3/3s that pay 1 to evolve. Your stat line is just a little lower. But overall, this card's just fantastic. Next, we have Crystalia Tia. This is a 2-cost 1/1 from set 2. This previously was part of the like big fast aggressive package to get bodies on board and swarm the opponent. Here, we're not really trying to use it in the same way, especially because board-wide removal is a lot more common this set, but we can still use it on really any turn to threaten our opponent, either bait out the removal or force them to have an answer somewhere. This is also just good as removal on its own. So it's Fanfare Combo 3, summon a Crystalia Eve token. That token is just a 4/4 with no extra text. But if we pay 1 to evolve Tia, we evolve into a 2/2, and we're able to give the Crystalia Eve +1/+1 and rush. So that's going to give us a 2/2 and a 5/5 that can both attack the turn we've played them. So sometimes you can use it to pressure your opponent's life total, but a lot of times if your opponent's able to build a good board, you can use Tia and Eve to clear out their board while you're still continuing to set up your Beauty and the Beast. So it kind of doubles as either removal or aggression, just depending on what scenario we're in. The last 2-drop we have is a new card. This is Flower Princess. This is a 2-cost 2/3. Fanfare, put a fairy token into your EX area, so that's just going to be a 1-cost 1/1. And combo 3, put a Fable counter on this card. Funnily enough, I actually hate that this card makes a fairy token mandatory in your EX area, because we do want to be filling our EX area with all these Fable cards that have really good effects. And oftentimes the 1/1 fairy is just going to sit there and clog up your EX area, which, it's rough, but you can play them out to use them to sort of build combo for your next copy of Flower Princess, or to build combo for Crystalia Tia, or just to give you some bodies to chip away with and then maybe bounce to an Ancient Elf. So it's not the end of the world, but it can get annoying sometimes. Second effect is the reason we want the Fable counter. You can engage and remove the Fable counter to deal 3 damage to an enemy follower. This is just, for 2 cost, really good removal option. Since you can, play a 1-drop, play this, engage it, deal 3 to something. And if your 1-drops were, Elfchild made Nature's Guidance or something, you just get even more damage value. So it helps your turns where you're trying to clear board. It also provides something on the board that your opponent kind of needs to answer, which is going to force them to put 3 damage of removal into. Because we do have a lot of ways to refill the Fable counters on this card to continue dealing 3 to something every turn. And if not, you can go 2-face. But generally, this card is just going to threaten 3 damage removal every turn if your opponent doesn't answer it. Moving to 3-drops, we have another card that fills basically the same role as Flower Princess. This is a 3-cost 1/4. You can engage to put a Fable counter on this card, and then you can pay 1 and remove a Fable counter to destroy an enemy follower. So, while Flower Princess is good at dealing 3 damage and answering some smaller threats, Magical Fairy Lilac is here for the big threats. Paying 1 to, destroy a 5/5, destroy a 6/6. Your opponent plays a, I don't know, like Olivia, you destroy it. They play a huge, 6/7 ward or something. I don't know what you're really commonly going to be using this on, but anything that's bigger than 3, you can destroy. And since effectively putting the Fable counter on it is once per turn, but unlike Flower Princess, where you can only engage to deal 3 damage once a turn, this is just pay 1 to remove the counter. So as long as you can keep getting Fable counters, you can actually destroy as many things in a turn as you want, as long as you have the play points for them. And playing against some decks that make wide boards, like Sword and Chest Rune, I've actually used this to destroy as many as 3 big followers in the same turn. Since, again, you do have a lot of ways to keep putting Fable counters onto your followers during your turn. We'll talk about Alice next, but Alice is crazy at this too, because you can actually preemptively set up the Fable counters if you need to, instead of having to worry about it getting them the same turn that you play Lilac. So, looking at Alice, this is a 3-cost 3/3. This is just one of the best cards in the game right now, especially for its particular decks, obviously. But it's just super good card advantage engine, super high stat line. 3-drop 3/3, Fanfare, put a Fable counter on this card. Activated ability, remove a Fable counter from this card to select a Fable follower on your field or in your EX area and put a Fable counter on it. So the EX area part of this is what's super important, because our other 2 cards, Faria and Woodland Band, if you're trying to power up your Beauty and the Beast, you can only do it once the Beauty and the Beast is already on the board. But Alice can move can take a Fable counter off to put 1 on an EX area card, which can power up Beauty and the Beast while it's still sitting in your EX area waiting to come out. Or, if you know you're going to have a turn where you might need to remove multiple things, say you're playing against a deck that has a turn that makes a wide board, if you have a Lilac in your EX area or something like that, you can go ahead and start putting some counters on it, so that once you play it, you can just fire them all off in the same turn. This also has a lot of applications that improve the abilities of our other 2 counter generators. Since Alice can put things into the EX area, or put counters into the EX area, you can use Faria or Woodland Band to put a counter on Alice, and then remove that counter from Alice to put it on an EX area follower, which essentially just lets your Farias and Woodland Band also access EX area. Evolving for 1 play point, we become a 4/4. we still have the same ability to move counters. And on evolve, look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may put up to 2 Fable cards from among them into your EX area. Put the remaining cards in the bottom of your deck in any order. So we obviously still have all the same follower targets as Woodland Band, except Alice, unlike Woodland Band, which can only hit followers, Alice can actually hit Woodland Band as well, which can kind of let us chain check top 4s to dig as far as possible, as fast as possible. Because in this deck, you really do want Beauty and the Beast into your EX area as soon as possible. If you can play a turn 1 Woodland Band and get it there, you are golden. Or, you know, a lot of times I've played the deck where you go turn 1 Woodland Band, you might find like Alice, and then turn 2 Nature's Guidance Woodland Band, find the other one. And you're just really trying to get it there, get set up. If you've played Woodland Band, the turn where you play Alice is usually a good turn to move that counter onto your Beauty and the Beast, unless you think you might need it for removal later. But this is effectively draw 2 cards, right? Because you're going to be able to play those cards later. And you start setting up your kill combo. So this card is rightfully just the biggest card in the new set. Which, obviously, it does only work in these Fable decks, but it is just such a powerful engine that makes these decks really as powerful as they are. Next follower at 4 cost, we have Silence Suzuka. This card has seen some play in Forest last set, just as a way to close out the opponent, since it has Storm. It's a 4 cost 4/1 Storm, no other text. It can evolve for 2, however. It evolves into a 5/2, still has Storm. On evolve, you put an enemy follower on top of its owner's deck. So this is basically a way to remove a ward and get in for 5 damage at the same time. You have to be a little careful because 2 defense is quite low. This dies to pretty much any quick timing removal spell. So you usually want to just run this out on turns that your opponent has used all their play points. This is actually especially good at chunking the Fable Haven deck for a lot of damage, since using Humpty Dumpty puts them on 0 cards in hand. You often know, even if they have play points up, whether they have removal options or not. And this card acts as our way to close out the game if we never found a Beauty and the Beast, because sometimes, as much as it sucks, you are going to have games where you don't get Beauty and the Beast into your EX area. Sometimes that's because they were in your like pre-mull hand, and you're like, man, I can't keep this hand because 2 of the cards in it are 6 drops, which are Beauty and the Beast. And if you mulligan them to the bottom of your deck, then you're probably not going to find them at any point, and Silent Suzuka becomes your way to deal the most damage. So in those games, the important thing to remember with Suzuka is probably not to run her out immediately unless you have another copy, which we do play 3. So that's, you know, 2 that you can evolve and 1 that you can just attack with is 14 damage. But if you save them for turns where you can also play something to return them to your hand, you can get in with them for damage multiple turns in a row, such as like, you know, turn 5, you can play Suzuka, hit for 4, Nature's Guidance it back to hand. Or later in the game, play it, maybe evolve, attack, Marvelous Sunday, bounce it back, gain some life. Anything like that can kind of extend the amount of damage that you can potentially do with her. And finally, of course, Beauty and the Beast. We already looked at this card a little bit. 6 cost 5/7 is great stats. Rush and Aura means that even if you do draw extra copies of these in the mid game, you can just play them down to rush and attack your opponent's follower and use it to clear. It's still going to be potentially difficult for your opponent to remove. 5 attack is going to make it, you know, kill most things back that are attacking into it. And 7 defense means it may take multiple things crashing into it to get rid of it. Fanfare, we get the Fable counter, and if it came from not our hand, it gains Storm. That's how we're going to be killing our opponent for sure. Trying to just get this into EX area, build up as many Fable counters on it as possible. Play it forward, get another Fable counter, pay 1, remove all of them, get +X/+X. Some games you're maybe only getting +3/+3, other games you might be getting +7/+7. Really just depends on what order you draw your cards in, but thankfully you typically know when you're trying to go for a game how many you have, and sort of what life threshold you need to get your opponent to first. And of course, Woodland Band and Woodland Band and Alice Wonderland Explorer are our main ways to get Beauty and the Beast into our EX area. They're our only ways, so trying to recur these as often as possible to find Beauty and the Beast is our goal early in the game. And later in the game, using Faria, Woodland Band, and Alice to get Fable counters onto Beauty and the Beast to power it up. Taking a look at the deck as a whole, I do think this deck is rightfully regarded as one of the like tier 1 decks of this format, just because of the amount of board control and finisher power it has. The pros for the deck: a very low curve makes most of your hands playable. You don't really have to feel bad about mulliganing a semi-playable hand to try to get a really good hand with this, because your fail case is drawing just like 2 costs and 3 costs, which are still fine. You're basically going to be able to play anything in the early turns. You're not going to just fall over to aggro decks. We have a lot of removal packages that are really powerful. Flower Princess dealing 3 for cheap. Lilac being able to destroy anything regardless of its defense. May being able to shoot down wide boards. Even like Silent Suzuka top decking something is great. Lily bottom decking is fantastic. Like half our deck is removal, so most decks that are trying to go wide and get in damage on us while we set up are going to struggle to do so. And our finisher is super uninteractive. It has aura, so once we play it and attack with it, there's pretty much nothing our opponent can do to stop it. And with the amount of power it can gain, as much as, you know, 10 attack, 12 attack, it's going to be swinging in to just close out games that your opponent didn't even think, you know, they were at danger of dying. Cons, however, there are a lot of multi-card combos in the deck that need multiple moving parts, which it can be feasible to set them up to do once, but if you need to do them multiple turns to keep your engine going, it can be hard to keep drawing those cards back. We only have a limited number of bounce cards after all. Beauty and the Beast won't always be in your top 4 cards. That is something you have to keep in mind. Getting Beauty and the Beast to have Storm does rely on you finding it in your top 4 check for either a Woodland Band or Alice. And you can do those checks a lot in a single game. I've had games where the first 4 turns of the game I played Woodland Band 4 times. But that doesn't mean you're going to find Beauty and the Beast. You can always get unlucky on those. You can always end up drawing them between your turns. So you need to have other ways to end the game, and sometimes those other ways might just not be enough compared to Beauty and the Beast. That's something you have to accept playing this deck. The other downside is that a lot of your followers have very low attack stats. Your only cards that are really big are an Ancient Elf after 2 bounces, the Eve token from Tia, and then your top end, Silent Suzuka and Beauty and the Beast. And in addition to that, a lot of your followers want to be engaging for their effect instead of actually attacking. So it can be hard to do anything more with our followers than chip in a little bit of damage at a time. Which is why, of course, one of our goals is to just get our opponent into a range where a huge Beauty and the Beast can kill them all at once. That being said, here's the deck as a whole. Again, you can check out the deck log code in the bottom right. That's in SQP if you want to take a closer look at it. Here's our Evolve deck. And thank you for watching. I really do think this deck is going to be a great pick for the Springfest season, especially in the set 3 format before we get set 4, these early regionals. The Forest deck is just, it was already really strong, and this is just a version of it that you can be a lot more aggressive with. You don't need all the hand for Silverbolt, so you can just run out cards, attack your opponent, control the board forever without needing to worry about your hand size, and end with a powerful finisher that no decks can really answer. So again, thanks for watching. We'll have some more videos out on set 3 soon. Until then, you should be able to check out the videos on the screen, and we'll see you next time.